Hello, today we're going to look at growing on your seedlings. So presumably if your seedlings have germinated, no matter what they are, if they were tomatoes or chilies, you would have germinated them at 22 degrees, 21, 22 degrees. If for other ones it would have been slightly colder. But when they emerge, the first problem you're faced with is you don't want them to get very high, you don't want them to get leggy, where the stem becomes elongated. This usually happens when the plant is trying to get to the light. So typically, people would plant on their windowsills. The stem will elongate to try to get to the light, and typically then you turn it around and it will elongate the other way. This is not great for the plant. It will lead to them getting very long stemmed, and therefore they'll become very weak and they'll eventually break. Another problem that young seedlings face is that they get a disease, a fungal infection called damping off, where the stem becomes very brittle and it's very prone to snapping. So I'm going to talk about how to counteract them two problems with seedlings today. So the first one is your light. So when you have your seedlings on a windowsill, I'm going to use 3 here now today. So in order to counteract the light, you're going to use a very simple device. So it's something you can make easily at home. So this is tinfoil, the shiny side facing outwards, and you're just sticking it on to a 3-sided, or you can use a 4-sided cardboard box. This then will go over the windowsill, and therefore your seedlings will have a uniform light. I'm just going to show you what that will look like. And if you make 2 of these, they'll fit most windowsills, or you can get a much bigger box. So by keeping it like that, the light is going to reflect off the tinfoil and back onto the plants. And you can see these 2 courgettes have had it for a long time, and they're very even growth, so they're growing straight up, and that's what you want. So a very simple device, the tinfoil, and you'll get great results with it. So as I said, if you make 2 of them, you'll fit most windowsills completely. The second thing to note is the fungal infections, so that damping off. And particularly prone to it is the courgette. So these are an early courgette. So first of all, to make sure that they're not, you don't overwater them. So keep the watering of the courgette family, courgette, pumpkin, cucumber, to a minimum, and you're letting them, they don't need that amount of water at this early stage. So you can see this one has put out its 2 big seed leaves. You can see them there, they're kind of spoon shaped. And after that, it's put out its true leaves, so the more typical courgette leaf. So the courgette leaf are kind of fairly big and broad. So in order to make sure that it doesn't get any fungal infections or to ward them off, we're going to use a chamomile tea. So I've put mine in a spray bottle. So what you can do is make a full pot of chamomile tea, let it go cold. There's 2 optional additives you can put into it. The first one being a clove of crushed garlic, and this also has antifungal properties. The second one is a teaspoon of full fat milk, which the full fat milk also has antifungal properties. So that's personal choice if you want to use all 3. And then you're going to water with that. So whether you water from up above or below, you're trying not to wet the foliage, you're just trying to wet the soil. So the second way to prevent fungal infections, the damping off, is to make sure your soil isn't overly damp. Overly damp soil will also rot the seeds at an early stage. So your soil should always feel damp to the touch. So when you touch it with your finger, it should feel damp, but it shouldn't. The test is if you take up a little bit between your thumb and forefinger and squeeze it. If drops come out, you've overwatered it. So I prefer to water at the very early stages, to water from the bottom, because you're not disturbing the position of the seed within the pot. But afterwards, I use the spray, but don't spray directly on the foliage. Again, you can use the chamomile mixture and water it from the bottom. It's somewhat harder to control how much water it gets than with the spray bottle, so that's a personal choice. So you can see this plant, although it's quite low and quite small, is something very good. So you want your plants to come out nice and early, and that their seed leaves will develop at a very low level to the ground. And you can see just in the middle of the two seed leaves, the true leaf is emerging, and that's excellent. So, and much better than ones where it comes out at a greater height. Now this one isn't bad, but sometimes if the seed leaves emerge 3 or 4 or 5 inches from the soil level, that's not a great sign, and it can lead to very weak plants in the future. So you want your seed to come out nice, seed leaves to come out nice and early. Once the true leaves emerge, it won't grow much higher or significantly higher, and you're going to get much healthier plants. The second thing in terms of light is make sure that your soil is up to the very top of the pot. So that will, if you go a few inches from the top, your seedlings have to go that little bit further to get up and to get into light, and they'll inevitably get a little bit leggier. So that's what you want to avoid at all costs. So just to recap, in order to solve fungal issues, you're making sure you're not using nice sterile soil medium, so seeding compost. You're using either cool boiled or warm water from the kettle, and you'll have less contaminants, or cool boiled chamomile tea, or slightly warm chamomile tea. And you're making sure from the start that all your pots are nice and clean, so washing them in warm soapy water will remove any fungal spores or contaminants from the pot, and it will make it much more sterile. And once up, you're watering them with the chamomile tea mixture. So the garlic and the milk are optional, but they will make it an extra and give it extra antifungal qualities. From the light perspective, once your seeds germinate, so once they breach the soil at all, you are putting them on the windowsill, but putting on the windowsill with the light box. So for the things that require more heat, like the courgettes, chilies, tomatoes, they need 22 degrees, but it's only until the plant breaches the soil. And once it has emerged in any shape or form, you will take them out at the 22 degrees, and the normal heat in your house, which is typically 18 degrees, will be fine for them, and they don't need any more. So in there, you're using the light box. So the light box will cover your plants and give them a uniform light. If people have access to either cold frame or polytunnel, that will be the next stage. So before they go fully out, they need to be hardened off. So if they go to the tunnel, they need to go to a cold frame or be left out during the day for a week in order to harden them off and get them acclimatized to the cold conditions of outside. So of all the equipment that I've used in the past, I find a simple tinfoil box and using a chamomile tea bag have worked extremely well in terms of letting your seedlings grow on very good. A secondary thing, if you want to use the chamomile tea, if you use a chamomile tea bag and just before it gets wet, a dried chamomile tea bag, you open it up and sprinkle it onto some damp compost and cover it lightly. There is a certain amount of chamomile seeds within the tea bag, and you'll be able to grow on your own chamomile. So if you want to, chamomile is a very versatile plant, and it's one that acts as a companion plant for a number of different vegetables. So it's worthwhile having it in the garden. So thank you very much today. We're going to do a further video on potting on. So that's the next stage where you're going to move your plants on to bigger pots and more nutritious soil mediums. Thank you for listening, and tune in next time.